Hi, David Ellenstein here, Artistic Director of North Coast Repertory Theater. Thank you for tuning in today to our theater conversations. If you haven't done so already, please consider subscribing to our YouTube channel. That would help us out a lot. Thank you. Hello, and thank you for tuning into Theater Conversations. It's my great pleasure today to be joined by my friend. What's your name again? Phil. Wait, I got it. Phil Johnson.
Oh, yeah.
You know, one of the great things about being in this business is all of the wonderful people that you collect in your life. And there's nobody that's much more fun to have as a friend, a colleague, to work with, to create stuff with than Phil. And thanks for doing this today.
Oh, come on. I'm blushing now. I'm blushing
Let me see.
everywhere.
Blush. Let's see you blush.
Wait.
Uh-oh.
It's more of an internal blush.
This is a family show, Phil. So just to remind the North Coast Rep audience, Phil's been seen on our stage many times, and I'm just going to say these out of order, and I'll probably forget a few, so you'll help. 25th Annual Putnam County Spelling Bee, Laughter on the 23rd Floor, School for Lies, Don't Dress for Dinner. What am I forgetting?
What else is in there? We did Last of the Red Hot Lovers.
Of course. How could I forget? Oh, were you in that?
I did have a small part in that. It was those three women, and I came on every now and then to give them.
I remember that now.
Anguish.
Thank you for reminding me, because, you know, I'd completely forgotten that you were in that one.
Yeah.
And I remember the play.
The first time that we did a Jewish joke was also there.
Correct. The Jewish joke, which I was going to get to later, because I don't think of that one as North Coast Rep, but you did do it here as well. But yeah. A Jewish joke, which I was lucky enough to have Phil ask me to direct, which you did first at the Diversionary Space, or was it the Moxie Space?
We did it at Moxie when we presented it for my theater company that you directed there. But the first time we did it was in the Lipinski Festival at North Coast.
Okay, right. That was the first time.
Yeah.
All right. And then you toured it all over the place. I know Michigan. Did you do Michigan?
No, I did, I think 5 different places. I got a great date coming up too, but then we did our run in New York City, and everything about that was a great experience. I was lucky to have you and Aaron Rumley from North Coast too involved in it. Right.
Aaron, our production manager, stage manager extraordinaire, wearer of many hats, who came with us to New York when we did it off Broadway down there on 42nd Street.
Thank the Lord that he came with us. Yeah.
And just so people know, I mean, you now have your company that you founded called the Roustabouts, which we'll talk about in a minute. But before that, and before all the stuff I mentioned, you were an actor who was first based out of Chicago and then New York.
Yeah.
Who did national tours and things like. Can you talk a little bit about that? Just because people probably don't even realize that about you.
Yeah, it feels like so long ago. So I did those shows. The first big thing I got in, I was an actor in Chicago, and I did a lot of nightclub work in Chicago. My family had a nightclub. We owned a nightclub. I don't know if I ever even told you about that.
You did not.
No. And so I used to do a lot of cabaret stuff and a lot of stand-up kind of stuff. I think it's where I got my very loose kind of style. I have that to thank for it. But then the first big thing I got was Miss Saigon, the big first national tour that opened in Chicago at the Auditorium Theater, and it was a big, smelly deal. I was one of those guys screaming for the girls, yeah, I want one of those. So that was the first thing. And then I did Les Miserables. I did that on tour around the country and in Canada, and then on Broadway. And that was a fun little show, you know. Lots of people die, and then they sing, you know, which is the trick. And then I did Sunset Boulevard. I did Sunset Boulevard in Canada, and that was a fantastic experience, except that no one really liked Sunset Boulevard very much. But I loved it. I finally had kind of a fun part. And
was that you? Was that you? I thought it was Glenn Close.
Well, she usually did it, but I was her I was her fourth string understudy.
Okay.
Yeah, they called me Glenn Not So Close. Is what
Okay.
they called me. Yeah, I had to put a lot of makeup on for that. You know, she was fantastic. But I actually did it with Diane Carroll and Rex Smith. Go figure.
Okay. There
Rex
you go.
Smith.
So I didn't know your family owned a nightclub.
We
So
did.
was that your entry into the business?
Yeah, I had always done shows and I did a lot of stuff in school, but I don't know if you knew this. Well, you know that I actually originally was an architect.
Right.
I was an architect and I had always done both in college. And then there was a point where I had to choose and I chose the big money making world of show business. Show business. So that was a great time, you know, figuring out what was happening at that point. Lots of fun things were going on. But then I moved here after Sunset Boulevard looking to do more comedy and to do things that really used more of me, because I enjoyed those shows with dead people and guns, but I needed to I needed to leave that. Actually, the reason that I moved here is that they were seeing me for Cats. And I knew the drill. They were seeing me for Gus the theater cat. I knew the drill. I knew how it worked. I was on my third audition. I knew the next time they were going to say, we want you to do Cats. And I thought, I'd rather die. So I left. I left all that and I came here, and I've loved Southern California more than anything.
Do you think that they were interested in you for Cats because of your pelt?
Yes. I actually had a pelt. Wait, I'd like to show you a picture of me when I was in Les Miserables.
All right, let me see. Oh, yes.
So yes, I had a pelt.
Yes, I like that picture. It's very nice. It's very nice. This is me as Serpico.
This was my, oh, look, we almost look the same. We're kind of like brothers.
Oh, look, it's me. Oh, I still look exactly the same.
Oh, you have a kind of a Jewish American fro, and I have a mullet, kind of a
mullet.
An
80s hairband mullet.
Yeah.
Very nice. By the way, back in Chicago, did you ever encounter in your parents' club when you were doing comedy, my cousin Louis Two Guns Ellenstein? he was a talent scout. I'm sorry.
Is that for real?
No, it's not.
It was a wild, wild time. The club's name was Boombala.
Oh my gosh.
Well, yeah, my sister came up with it. And so it was, you know, night after night after night. It was the best training ground in the world for me because I got used to just getting up and performing. Get up, perform. You have to be funny right now. So that was it was a fun experience for me. And it molded a lot for me later.
Did you say it made you moldy?
Made me moldy, and yes. And so there was a little bit of a crust, and I had to, you know.
We did another show together, didn't we? Another one that you wrote with Omri Schein.
Don't forget it. That's right. We did Withering Heights.
We did Withering Heights. That was a wild. I used to go home from rehearsal with a headache from laughing so much. I remember that. My wife would say to me, "How are you?" I'd say, "I have a headache."
I think that was one of the most fun times ever when we did that show. It was Omri and I and you, the three of us coming up with that stuff at Diversionary Theater.
Yeah, it couldn't have been much more silly.
No, it was very silly. And
so talk a little bit now you've created your own company called the Roustabouts. Talk a little bit about that, what you've done, what you have planned, all that stuff.
Well, yeah, so about 4 years ago, we made up the Roustabouts, a company of writers, 3 writers, Will Cooper and Ruff Yeager and myself. And our mission is new plays and by Southern California writers and old classics. So we've been doing that, and it's been going very nicely. We're small. We're super small. We're a little smaller than you, ever so slightly smaller than North Coast.
Ruff is not smaller than me.
No, Ruff is not smaller than you. But we've done a bunch of productions I'm very proud of. We did A Jewish Joke there before we went to New York City. We just finished a production that unfortunately opened and closed the same day, thanks to COVID, called Guntopia, about a world where everyone has a gun and everyone was expendable. So I was very proud of that. We had a lot of really wonderful talkbacks set up with political figures and experts talking about gun violence and control and how to talk to the other side in an argument like that. I think it's kind of the direction that our company is going, is very, very involved backup experiences where we get the audience to take a lot back home with them, which is an idea that I stole from you, because you told me one time the audience should have something to take home with them. So I've always remembered that.
Oh, well, good. I give them a little piece of candy sometimes.
We do too. Yeah. But sometimes it's a different kind of candy.
So Phil, when I first came to San Diego, a mutual friend of ours, Paula Kalustian, who I've known since I was young, and she was young, and we're still young, don't get me wrong. She said, oh, you have to get to know Phil Johnson. He's the funniest guy in San Diego. And you do kind of have that reputation in the theater world here in San Diego. But what people may not realize about you is you're also a really good actor. And I knew that about you. I mean, I got to experience on stage with you in Laughter on the 23rd Floor, where all of the characters in that play are funny at one time or another, but the role you played was more of the straight man and the glue of the piece that tried to keep everybody on track.
Right.
Which was a different thing for you to do, but I thought you did it really, really well. And I thought it was some of your best work. And then then when I got to work with you on Jewish Joke and you were able to bring your more serious self to that role, I went, Phil's a really good actor. Your background's comedy, and you talk about all the improv and stand-up that you did when you were younger. But talk about the difference between doing a role that's just silly and zany like Withering Heights, or doing something that's got a little bit more depth to it, and the different kind of satisfaction you get from doing those.
And thank you for saying that. You're too nice to me. I'll give you that quarter I promised you later, much later.
35 cents now.
35 cents. Wow. Ooh, goes up in the North County, I guess. It is different. And I realized that comedy is, especially for me, comedy very much has a feeling of, I want to mess around with you. I want to play with you. There's the feeling I really want to jump into the sandbox with the play, with the character, with the story. I love creating somebody who's as detailed as I can get. He's had as many different aspects of himself. Doing a dramatic piece, especially like a Jewish Joke, was almost my gateway into that. It was the first time I really did something that was both. And it was written looking at a very, very funny character of an old 1950s comedy screenwriter who goes through the worst day of his life. And that was a good transition for me because I got to really kind of do everything in that play. And I've realized the real gift of a great drama is feeling, is what can I leave the audience with? And message has become very important to me with my own company now. What am I leaving the audience with? What's the message? And I hope I'm not getting to a place of where I'm pounding people over the head with something, but I do love pieces that leave you with something that might change you, that might take you to a different understanding of our world and each other. And I am loving that. So I kind of love both halves of performing, that playing with someone in the sandbox, but that idea of what can we really send someone home with that might make them different people, better people.
Right. Well, as you know, I grew up in the theater, and I remember as a kid going to all those plays, and whether it was a heavy drama, because I remember seeing Gorky's The Lower Depths when I was 6 years old, and or whether it was going to see a crazy musical like Irma La Douce that was just fun-filled and dancing and crazy, silly jokes and stuff, I always left the theater feeling more alive. I always felt like I had been infused with some kind of humanity that I didn't always get to experience walking around on the street, but that was possible.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. Yeah, more alive, more of yourself. That's great.
Right. So what do you want now? I mean, you're heading into your third decade of life, And what do you want as you head into your 40s? What, or fourth decade, I guess it is for you.
How did you know?
I just guessing.
I don't tell people my age, really.
Do you have roles you want to play? Do you have plays you want to do? Do you have specific things in mind, or are you just kind of flowing with it and letting it come as it comes?
Yes and yes.
Okay, go for it.
The stuff that's coming up next, and you know, right now, that's the big deal, is programming. What are we all going to do? I've written a play with my co-writer Marni Freedman on a Jewish joke about Theodore Roosevelt, and I can't wait to do it. I can't wait to do it. I'm planning on doing it in September. We'll see if that happens. But a big part of me wanted to show people, I feel character in America was an endangered substance. And I look at this guy as, he's the most inspiring person I can imagine in American. There are probably people who are bigger and more, certainly Abraham Lincoln, but Theodore Roosevelt was a real American who left the country with I think brave leadership and the best of himself that he could to leave the country with. I want to do comic roles. There's still, I'd love to do the producers. I'd love to do Bialystok.
Yeah.
I want to do an Arthur Miller play. I want to do The Price, which I believe I have probably mentioned to you once or twice about playing my brother, hopefully.
Well,
that's just a quick ad. That's just a quick ad.
What's The Price?
Oh, that's a joke.
No.
Oh, Arthur Miller would laugh. Oh, he would laugh so hard. There's other things I want to write, things having to do with racial injustice. I have an idea for something that's funny, but quite hard-hitting. And I have a lot of projects. I have a lot to do. And some of it I want to get back to doing comedy. I started doing a show called There's a Bug in the Room. It's not me going insane.
This isn't some kind of strange acting exercise we're having to watch you go through?
Yeah, sometimes I do that. This is a pillow. But I started Casa del Haha, which was a comedy sketch show that I wrote at North Coast. And I loved doing that so much. So it's funny, I'm drawn by, and I did Zoo Story over a year ago. That was an experience. I've never done anything that heavy, that deep. You better really pull at whatever you've got going on in you for Zoo Story. But I love doing comedy and I love going to the other end. So you're right. There are a lot of plays I'd like to look at, and there's still a lot I want to write.
Right.
You know, I always remember the stuff I've done at North Coast really makes me remember how great performing can feel, how fun the enjoyment of that audience can be. Stuff like Spelling Bee and Don't Dress for Dinner, when I would torture Chris Williams, who's another person involved at North Coast Rep, and sometimes I like to torture him. Yeah, I've tortured him once or twice. And Jackie Wilkie and Jessica John Girk. You know, you have experiences like that. Or when we did Laughter on the 23rd Floor, Last of the Red Hot Lovers. Laughter on the 23rd Floor was the funniest dressing room I've ever been in my life. It was, the quips were like this. Ba-da-boom, ba-da-boom, ba-da-boom. Then we had to go out on stage. So it was just a joy from the first moment. I love those experiences. Yeah. I think you live for those experiences.
I will second you on that laughter dressing room because I was in there too. I often had to go out of the dressing room because I needed to think for a second about the play before we started. But it was crazy in there.
Just with the leading role. What?
You were a ringleader, as I recall.
I think it was Chris Williams, really. I think it was Chris Williams.
Those of you who don't know who Chris is our associate artistic director here at North Coast Rep, who's been in probably 15 or 18 of our plays, directed a bunch of them, stage managed a few of them, has really worked here as much as anyone, at least since I've been here. So,
I do remember rolling around on a couch with him in Don't Dress for Dinner with a telephone cord and seeing who could get strangled first. That's one of my favorite moments. I'll always cherish it. Yeah.
Right. So here we are at this very, very strange time where we still can't put on theater. I think we're getting closer. think we're getting closer to our being able to at least start to get back.
Yeah.
I'm going to say be all the way back, but start to get back. What are your hopes? What are you hoping for walking forward?
Yeah, what do we hope for in the next phase, after the quarantine? I think all we can do is try to bring the audience some either lightness in comedy or enlightenment. That's what I always hope, that something I go and see will inspire me. I look for inspiration when I look at performing, when I look at shows. And sometimes a comedy can be incredibly inspiring. It can leave you with something amazing, or a performance is so wonderful and light and inventive that you remember that there's lightness in the world, even with everything we're always up against. So going forward, I look to go back and forth between those extremes and just keep putting material out there as long as I can. That's my hope.
Well, thanks for doing this today so that the North Coast audience can see that you really, truly are as crazy as everybody thinks you are. So
Why do you got to be a hater? That's what I ask myself.
I always love hanging out and spending time with you, Phil, and doing shows with you. So hopefully we're going to do more together soon and in person. But this is really good. I'm glad you did this today, and it's great to see you. So thanks.
It's great to see you. Thanks for asking me. Thanks for having me.
Okay.